42 years old. For the past 14 years, I thought I was living a peaceful, steady life with my wife Jade and our daughter Zoe, now 19 and a freshman in college. We weren't wealthy, but I always thought I was lucky. I had a family. I had a home. At least that's what I believed. Until one Tuesday morning changed everything. I was coming down the stairs half awake, still shaking off sleep. That loose rug on the top step, the one I'd asked Jade to fix more times than I can count, caught my foot. I tripped. And I fell hard, like a sack of bricks. There was a loud snap, my left arm. My head slammed into the wall. Everything blurred. But I didn't pass out. I heard Jade running up, her voice laced with fake panic. "Oh my God, Theodore!" Then Zoe's voice, calm, casual. Was he drunk again? And then, the words that froze my blood in my veins. "This might be our chance. He's useless now. Just say he was drunk and let's speed things up." Jade, the woman I trusted with my life, and Zoe, my little girl, the one I used to rock to sleep every night, responded without hesitation. "Finally, we'll be free." I lay there, pain radiating through every nerve, lip bleeding from how hard I was biting down to keep quiet. Because I knew, if I stood up right then, I'd never find out just how deep this betrayal went. I was taken to the hospital with a broken arm and a mild concussion. Jade rode with me in the ambulance, holding my hand, voice trembling with practiced concern. "He's been under a lot of stress lately. Sometimes he drinks in the mornings. I'm really worried." I looked the doctor straight in the eye and said, weak but steady, "I don't drink. Maybe it spilled on me when I fell." Jade flinched, just for a second, but I saw it. That flicker of panic. Then she went right back to the worried wife routine. But I already knew, and I wasn't going to forget it. When we got home, I pretended I didn't remember a thing. "I must have passed out. It's all fuzzy," I said. Jade let out a soft sigh of relief. Zoe wouldn't even make eye contact, and I remembered every single detail. That night, lying in bed with my arm in a cast and my head spinning, I waited until the house went silent. Then I pulled out my phone. I checked our joint bank account. There should have been over $50,000 in there. What was left? Just a little over $19,000. And the last withdrawal? $40,000. 3 days before I fell down the stairs. I kept scrolling through the transaction history. Small withdrawals, scattered over the course of nearly a year. Thousands of dollars, gone, like sand slipping through my fingers. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. Not from pain, but because I realized I hadn't been living in a home. I'd been living in a trap I mistook for a sanctuary. The next morning, I told Jade I needed more time to rest, maybe take a few days off work. She didn't even try to hide her relief. "Of course, sweetheart, I'll take care of everything. You just focus on getting better." And just like that, I started playing the role of a broken man. So they'd believe it. So they'd let their guard down. So I could get ready to strike back. I called the bank, opened a private account. I called a lawyer. Her name was Wren. 3 different websites called her a shark in heels. I liked her immediately. I sent her every piece of evidence I had. I hired a private investigator, installed cameras in the living room, in Jade's office, and I started digging, deep, into every corner of the life they thought I'd never uncover. A week passed. That's when I found it. An email from Jade to Zoe. "Once he pays next year's tuition, I'll file for divorce. Say he's losing his memory, drinking again. It'll be easy to handle." My hand shook as I read the next line. "Then I'll move in with Nelson." Nelson, Jade's boss. The man she once insisted was strictly professional. Turns out they'd been texting for over a year. It wasn't sexual. No, it was worse. It was emotional. A deep, slow-burning betrayal. She'd painted me as unstable, weak, worthless. And Zoe, my daughter? She was in on it all. She helped shape the plan. Told her mom to stick to the script. The same little girl who used to call me her hero was now helping create a version of me that looked like a broken, alcoholic failure. I printed everything. Then I sat there in the living room surrounded by pages, emails, texts, bank statements, evidence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow. And then something sparked. They think I'm broken, but I'm just bending down to tie my laces. That's when I started to move again. One-handed, I cooked, did dishes, watered the plants. Jade seemed confused. "You're getting better already?" That was fast. Jade smiled as she set a plate down in front of me. I nodded, returned her smile. But behind that smile was a plan she could never even begin to imagine. I told her I wanted to install security cameras around the house. "For safety," I said. "You know, just in case." It was a perfectly reasonable request, coming from a man in recovery. She nodded, didn't question it once. And just like that, the mini cameras started sending me nightly footage. Clips recorded while I was supposedly asleep from my medication. Moments they thought I was too broken to notice. I watched Jade whisper to Zoe in the kitchen. Just a few more weeks. Once the tuition clears, I'll file. Gotta do it before he starts getting too sharp again. Zoe, calm as ever, popping fries into her mouth. You didn't pour enough whiskey on Dad's shirt yesterday. Make sure it smells stronger this week. If the court sees he's coherent, we're screwed. They thought I was just a shadow, a money printing machine that could cook, endure, and, most of all, stay silent. But soon, they were going to learn something very important. Even shadows can catch fire. When pushed far enough. I began moving small amounts of money, just a few hundred at a time, from the joint account into my private one. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to protect the legacy I built with my own 2 hands. I met with Ren every week. She looked at me like a soldier who'd come back from the front lines. You're playing the long game, she said, and you're winning. I nodded. But some nights, I still lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling Jade breathe beside me, peaceful, serene, unbothered. I used to love that face. Used to think I was the luckiest man alive to wake up next to her. Now I see a fox curled up on my mattress, dreaming of tearing me apart piece by piece. And then, the day came. Zoe called that morning, said she wanted to come home for dinner. Jade raised an eyebrow. That's weird. She never just decides to visit. But I wasn't surprised. I knew exactly why. This dinner, according to their original plan, was the final scene before Jade would file. A distraction. A farewell act. One last meal before the ambush. And I smiled. Their final dinner. A meal I cooked just the way they liked it. Crispy roast chicken, garlic butter, mashed potatoes, warm molten chocolate cake. The house was filled with the kind of smell that made you think nothing had ever gone wrong. They sat down at the table. It looked like the picture-perfect family. Zoe played the concerned daughter. So, how are you feeling, Dad? Sleeping okay? Jade poured the wine. Have a sip, she said with that crooked little smile. Or are you afraid you'll take another tumble? I chuckled, nodded, raised my glass, then slowly set it down. There's something I'd like to say. Their forks froze mid-air. The air around us shifted. I watched Jade's hand tighten around the edge of her chair. Zoe glanced at her mother, then back at me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped play on the audio recording. From the morning I fell down the stairs. If he dies, even better. If not, we'll just say he was drunk. Saves us the waiting. Jade's voice, crystal clear, unmistakable. Zoe whispering. Finally, we'll be free. Their faces turned pale. Zoe started crying. Jade shot up from her chair. That's not what you think. I was scared. I panicked. I calmly reached for a folder beside me, opened it. Page after page. Jade's secret bank account, her withdrawal history, texts with Nelson, photos of whiskey bottles carefully planted around the house, a full breakdown of their plan to make me look like a drunk, an unstable liability. Divorce papers already signed and dated. Jade's legs buckled. Zoe stammered through her tears. I didn't know. Mom said it was just to scare you. I looked her straight in the eyes. The same girl I once imagined walking down the graduation aisle with my arm in hers. The same girl I worked 60 hours a week for, so she could go to the best schools. No one dragged you into this, I said. You walked in on your own, and now you're going to have to walk yourself out. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the table. I just spoke in the voice of a father who had lost everything, except his dignity. After I cleared the table that night, no one said a word. The house that once felt like a home was now nothing more than a hollow shell filled with stifled sobs and darting glances. Jade sat in the living room, eyes red and glassy. Zoe locked herself in her room, soft music barely audible. Not to be heard, but to hide behind. And me? I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Ren, my attorney. Initiate final stage. Meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Proceed with filing. When Jade walked into the kitchen an hour later, she tried to smile. For the first time in months, she didn't wear it well. You're really going through with this? She asked. You're really going to divorce me? You can't reconsider? For Zoe? For everything? I looked at her. No anger, no insults. Just the eyes of a man who once loved deeply, and now felt absolutely nothing. No, not for her, not for you, for me. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I slept on the couch, like I did when I broke my arm. Only this time it wasn't because of physical pain. It was because I could no longer share a bed with someone who once wished me dead. The next morning I disappeared, not to hide, but to reclaim my freedom. I walked into my lawyer's office, sat with Ren, and officially filed the lawsuit. financial fraud, deliberate fabrication of evidence to damage personal reputation, malicious intent to alienate for asset manipulation. At the same time, I emailed the full documentation and audio files to Tatum, Nelson's wife, the same Nelson Jade had been sneaking around with. Tatum, who held a bulletproof prenup, and more than enough power to make Nelson's perfect life collapse in free fall. That afternoon, I sent a formal notice to Zoe's university, terminating all financial aid on account of a change in personal financial circumstances. I also submitted papers to form a charitable trust, funds redirected to community causes. No Zoe's name on it, and definitely not her mother's. When I got home, I saw Jade with her head down on the dining table, the same table where she once played the perfect wife. In front of her was an envelope, the signed divorce papers. Zoe sat on the stairs, her eyes swollen. She looked at me like I was a stranger. I walked in, placed another envelope on the table. Asset division. I didn't keep much, just myself. The court will handle the rest. Jade broke down. 4.0. We can fix this. Please? You can't just walk away like this. I looked down at the table. The mac and cheese I used to make for my daughter was still there, stone cold. This isn't heartless. This is me learning from how you treated me. I turned, walked to the door, picked up my suitcase, unlocked the car, started the engine. Zoe called out softly. Dad. I turned back, my eyes softer now. You're still young. You're allowed to make mistakes, but you have to learn how to live with the consequences. I'm still your daughter, right? I nodded. You are. But you're a daughter who needs to learn how to be a better human being. 3 days later, I got a text from Tatum. Nelson's out of the company. Divorce is in progress. Thank you for showing me the truth. 1 week later, Zoe posted online looking for a part-time job. No one told me, but I knew, because I still watched from a distance, quietly. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Jade's parents. There was silence on the line for a while. Then her father spoke. Son, we were wrong, very wrong. If you ever need anything, we're here. And I simply said, I don't need anything. Just remind your daughter there are some men you can't easily replace. 2 months after that turning point, I sat on the small wooden chair out on the balcony of my new apartment, a mug of black coffee in hand, eyes watching the shattered golden streetlight reflections below. It was spring. The wind still carried a chill, but it no longer cut deep, kind of like my heart. Jade and I officially went to court last week. The hearing lasted less than 90 minutes. The judge ruled in my favor, granted me sole ownership of the house, dismissed all false claims about mental health issues or alcoholism. Everything I submitted, the bank records, the voice recordings, the forged documents, the surveillance footage, was more than enough to expose every lie. Jade just sat there, clutching a tissue. No more tears. She knew. The game was over. Zoe was different. She didn't speak, no apology, no eye contact, and I didn't force it. I've learned something. Growth doesn't come from promises. It comes from quiet actions, and sometimes from silent regret. A week after the trial, I got a letter in the mail, no name, but the handwriting, neat, steady. I recognized it instantly. I don't expect forgiveness, Dad. I just want you to know, I finally realize I lost something I can't easily get back. A father who was always there, no matter how many times he was betrayed. I'm trying to change, little by little. If there ever comes a day when we could have coffee together, as two adults, I'll be waiting. Love you, even if it's too late. I didn't cry, but something inside my chest softened, like that first spring rain, washing away the dust of a long drought. And me? I went back to work. Not 60-hour weeks like before. I chose a smaller company, smaller paycheck, but it came with slow afternoons, time to watch clouds, bake bread, read books. I started learning how to love myself again. Not for anyone, not to prove anything, just because. I finally understood I deserved a life that felt like mine. I reconnected with some old friends, and one of them, Kelly, invited me out for a beer. Just two people who once shared a little history, and maybe, just maybe, something more waiting to be written. It wasn't about dating, it wasn't about starting something new. It was just two people, sharing quiet company without expectations. And I realized, healing doesn't come from revenge, or from taking back what was lost. It comes when you look in the mirror each morning and see, you're still you. A man who didn't break, even when pushed to the edge. That night I went for a walk through the little park near my place. I saw a father teaching his son how to ride a bike. I stopped, just watched. The kid fell. The father rushed over, dusted off his knees, and smiled. It's okay, buddy, every fall makes you stronger. I nodded to myself. Maybe once I was that boy. Maybe later I was that father. And now, I'm both. The one who fell, and the one who got back up. I don't need to be seen as a hero. I just want to live as a decent man one more time. You've just heard a story that isn't perfect, but it's real. If it moved you, if it touched something inside you, please consider sharing it. Subscribing, because somewhere out there, someone like Theodore is still quietly fighting just to stay human. Thanks for listening. Thanks for